know there was a witness.
Carter didn't tell me about the eyewitness.
Yeah, Amish kid, 8 years old.
A man of force.
I'm a police officer, ma'am. I have to talk to the boy.
A woman of faith.
You don't understand. We have nothing to do with your laws.
Yes, I do. Your son's a material witness to a homicide.
Worlds apart.
Now you have a witness.
Yeah, now I got a witness.
John, what's going on, man? What is happening?
You said we would be safe in Philadelphia.
Well, I was wrong.
He left with the Amish woman, right?
If they find me, they find the boy.
You bring this man to our house with his gun of the hand. You bring fear to this house.
Everyone has an idea about you and the Englishman.
They're looking for you.
I have done nothing against the rule of the ordinance.
Nothing? Maybe not yet.
We know where you are.
Harrison Ford and Kelly McGillis. Witness.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to GeekFest Rants. My name is Carlos Peron, and joining me, I have James. Say hi, James.
Hello, hello.
Well, today we are going to try slightly, because this could be an even bigger show than we want it to be, but we're going to try to examine a little bit of Harrison Ford's career in a non-genre manner and in a kind of a 80s/90s manner where he kind of starts to try to firm up his serious acting chops and his serious acting cred as far as Hollywood is concerned in a non-Star Wars Indiana Jones kind of way. Now, let's first give a little background, because we have to give a background of what are we dealing with and what point in life and what exactly is he coming off of, James?
Well, I kind of came up with this idea because there's a couple of his movies that I really like, and they're not genre. They're serious serious movies.
Yeah.
Some of them not pleasant, not happy endings. He's not heroic even in some of them. And I thought about it and I said, well, let's look at him. Let's see what we've got. What did he try to do? And I think he made an effort to do some serious movies. I mean, a lot of actors want to be known. A lot of actors want to be famous. A lot of actors want to make money. But I think a lot of them want some respect as well. And we find that a lot of our favorite actors do try to make some serious, dramatic, Oscar maybe bait type movies.
And Harrison Ford is definitely not the first person we've ever heard of who does very super successful genre material, and then all of a sudden he's like, well, hold on, I want you to know me a little more for my real serious stuff.
Yeah, a good agent will always tell you, here, try a couple different things unless you're, unless you have no range, or something.
Now, would you disagree with me that Star Wars is kind of the place where most people got to know him?
Yeah, I mean, anything before that is where people see him now before Star Wars, but he was not the star of American Graffiti, which is probably his best known character. He is not the star of The Conversation. Nobody lined up to see Harrison Ford for The Conversation. They were looking for Gene Hackman.
He's a bit player, yeah.
Yeah, and the other things that he did, he was a character, he's filling a role.
A lot of television work also, yeah.
If it wasn't him, they would have said step aside and they would have had somebody else in his place. I don't know. But yeah, Star Wars, he's huge. Everybody, who's this new youngster, Harrison Ford, which, at that point he's in his 30s, but that's when his agent probably said, look, we can get you some other movies. And I feel Heroes and Hanover Street are probably the most dramatic and serious roles, pure action genre type characters. He did Force 10 from Navarone. That was a pure action movie.
Right, and he wasn't really a star either.
Exactly.
Now, what about Heroes? Because I remember the name, but I don't think I've ever seen it. What was that about?
Well, that was a movie he did with Sally Fields and Henry Winkler. And it was basically these characters, they're post-Vietnam vets.
Oh, okay.
They're struggling. I don't think we had the words PTSD and, Agent Orange effects and, whatever was affecting the soldiers of that era. I'm sure just the psychological effects of having served in a war so young.
Shell shock is what they used to call it.
Yeah, they had different names
II.
during different eras. But anyway, these guys were, trying to meet a friend, trying to get across country or wherever they were going to meet their buddy. And, somebody's not doing so well, so on and so forth. It's a serious movie. It's not a happy movie.
But it was kind of quiet, right? Kind of like a quiet movie.
He's the second. This is a Henry Winkler, Sally Fields movie, and he's there. You know, he's the second star or the co-star, however you want to say it.
Now, Hanover Street, I remember distinctly because of it played on HBO forever, I remember.
Well, I love this movie for various reasons. I mentioned it before. I think the story's compelling. It's it's a romantic kind of wartime, World War II time story, but it has the drama of going behind enemy lines. Christopher Plummer's the star. He's a big name. He's known for a lot of different types of stuff, especially back at that time. Yeah. And the director, Peter Hyams, was really a talented guy, and I like some of his later work as well. I like 2010, the sequel to 2001. And anyway, this guy, he has to get Christopher Plummer behind enemy lines, steal some stuff, do some this, do some that. And it turns out, throughout the movie, Harrison Ford's actually involved in an affair with Christopher Plummer's wife. So there's the double-edged sword there of that, and then also trying to complete your mission and trying to be heroic and not a cad, and it winds up being pretty dramatic, and it winds up being a pretty good movie. And the music is what really sells this from being like just a B-list movie, which it kind of was, and It's John Barry music.
But again, another quiet kind of movie in terms of box office and popularity. He's still kind of quietly bubbling up, not really, hitting noticeable home runs here in this serious material.
Yeah, and some of the other characters in it, if you check this movie out, it's young Harrison Ford, so you'll like to see that. And there's some other actors that you'll be surprised. I don't want to ruin it for you, but one of them was also in The Empire Strikes Back. Now,
before he hits his second huge, box office mega record streak, and I'm talking about with Empire, he had a couple of other small type of films, The Frisco Kid, a comedy western.
Yeah, I don't care about those. They're kind of like,
those are kind of cheesy.
Gene Wilder comedy movie. Handler. He's, again, a second banana.
Right. And Apocalypse Now, Bit Player, and More American Graffiti. Again, Bit Player parts, no big deal.
These are not movies that he did for serious cred or anything. He did them as favors to guys, and he did them because he was at the right place at the right time. I think the next one that we're going to talk about is Witness, and I think from beginning to end.
Let me just add that by the time we get to Witness, he's about to hit a home run with Empire, then Raiders, then Blade Runner, then Return of the Jedi, then again, Indiana Jones, Temple of Doom. He comes back for that, and now is where he decides in his career, like you mentioned, maybe it was his agent or somebody said, time to get serious.
But I also think he could probably have a pretty good pick of scripts at this point, too. People are looking to him. He's probably one of the top 3 people they're looking to get scripts to.
And his first choice, probably, in my opinion, was the best he could do, which was amazing, which was Witness.
I would agree.
This was a very big hit as far as serious films goes. Oscar nominated up and down the line for a lot of different ways, including, I believe he might have even been nominated for it.
Yes, he was. He was nominated.
And this is a story of a cop who has to hide out in Amish country, which, it was parodied a lot of times, when it came out. And it was a great Danny Glover out of the blue. This guy became a star out of this movie too, playing a bad guy. And again, a completely serious role, nothing funny about it, and a great cop film. It was a very good cop film, and you got to see him in a completely different environment.
It's a serious movie. It's a fish out of water movie, but not in a funny way, but as a man who's now got to adapt to a different lifestyle and learning and becoming friends with different type of people. And also a good police procedural. Like, I guess it was basically a, home run all around.
Yeah. Think about it as, I remember this is how I felt about it when I saw it. It was kind of like the closest we got to see him in this kind of role was Blade Runner, but obviously without all of the sci-fi element to it. It's a cop, straight cop story, and that's what he gets to play.
Now, again, talking about director, top director, Peter Weir also nominated for Best Director. The music is fantastic.
I love the music, yeah.
Everything really about this. Well shot, beautiful country, the Amish country and the Lancaster area in Pennsylvania. And the co-stars, like you said, Kelly McGillis as an Amish woman, wow, she still, makes you want to be Amish.
It was a career-building movie, not only for him, but for other people. They springboarded from this movie into other, successful stuff. Now, after Witness, we have Mosquito Coast.
It's funny how Mosquito Coast was something he was offered and was interested in before Witness. It just, things did not go together, financing, some things like that. So while they were working on it, and he was positive about it, Peter Weir said, look, I'd like you to do this Witness. And they said, yeah. And so both of them got on board with Witness. But then they went back once he was, after Witness, interested in really doing it. They did Mosquito Coast. Now, of the bunch, there's something about this one I like, but it is not a fan-friendly movie. It is not a crowd pleaser. It's a downer.
It's an uncomfortable kind of film, and I remember the biggest thing I remember about it was that I wasn't used to seeing Harrison Ford playing not so much a bad guy, but not the hero that we're used to seeing him play. He's a very flawed, kind of creepy guy at some points. Like, I don't like him. I dislike him. You know what I mean?
I think the movie is very strong. I think there's a lot to like about the movie. Unfortunately, people want certain actors to be the same all the time.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
Harrison Ford, they wanted Han Solo, Indiana Jones, even the hero from Witness. And what they got was a guy who was doing what he thought was the right thing, and he was a good man. He just was going about it in some really weird ways and alienating his friends, his family, his country, everybody else.
Well, this is a guy who wants to live off the grid, right?
Yeah, exactly. And now that's kind of become a little popular again with some people. This is only possible because of somebody who is smart and able to do it. You know, if this guy was not really as much of a genius as he was, this would have been a complete disaster.
But he's kind of like an environmentalist. He's not like a survivalist. He's more like into the nature environment, living off the land type of thing, right?
He's a mix of guys. He's a guy that is saying, hey,
too.
It's coming. You know what I'm talking. It's coming. They're coming for us. This country's falling apart. And what struck me as strange is the book that this was based on by Paul Theroux was written in the early 80s, but a lot of what's happening, you know, it depressed me even more watching it recently because the country still feels like it's happening. Something could happen. It could fall apart. It could go into chaos, and these are the things you need to learn. You need to know how to build a village and start a fire, etc., etc. So overall, not a happy movie, but what's really interesting is River Phoenix plays his son.
Ironically.
Yeah, and because of that, Harrison said, hey, to Steven Spielberg, check this guy out to play me, young Indy, in The Last Crusade.
Yeah.
And that's exactly where it came from. But Helen Mirren is in it, and man, she's beautiful.
Yep.
We should do a show on Helen Mirren sometime because she's been in so many things, but she's really super talented, and I still think she's pretty, even as an older woman. But again, the music is wonderful.
Right.
A very mellow feel, a very relaxed feel in the movie. Unfortunately, it just is not a happy ending, and I think that's what turned people off. I think the reviewers said this, and then the people kind of picked up on it, and only the hardcore Harrison Ford fans probably went to see it. I did not see it in the theater either.
Obviously, I don't think it was a huge hit. And like you said, I don't think the critics were very nice to the film itself, but it did definitely give him more street cred. He was flexing his acting chops, not necessarily playing the mustache twirling bad guy, but a guy that you really did not like a lot.
You wanted him to succeed,
occasions.
but some of the things he was doing were making you feel a little creepy.
And I think that was on purpose.
Yeah.
That's the reaction of his family. They support him. They like him, just like we like Harrison Ford. But when you see him do these weird things that are affecting the family in a negative manner, and you start to think he's being irresponsible. You know, if he was a single guy doing all these wacky things, well, okay, at least he's single, but he's dragging his family through the mud and through the jungle, and they get to a point where, like, you know, that's it. We had it. We can't take this anymore. Now, once again, he switches it up. This time he works with a very famous European director in Frantic.
Now, Roman Polanski has had many troubles in his life.
Controversial.
He's very controversial. This is not the show to go into all those. I will say, however, he is a genius as a director. He has made some fantastic movies. And I find this to almost be one of my favorites. Let's leave Star Wars, Blade Runner, and Indiana Jones out of it. This is probably my favorite Harrison Ford movie, and I can watch it again and again and again. And
why don't you tell us what the plot is a little bit?
Harrison Ford is a doctor. He and his wife go to France for some type of medical conference or something like that. Mm-hmm. Her suitcase is mixed up, lost, presumed somebody else has it. We're not sure. So as the film progresses, the suitcase is recovered, but there's still some kind of shenanigans because it looks very much like somebody else's who is carrying what we would presume might be drugs or smuggling of some sort. What the other girl is really carrying is some sort of device for triggering nuclear weapons. And it looks like some Middle Easterners are after it, the Mossad, which is the Israeli CIA type of thing. And then the French police somewhat get involved. Some American diplomats from the State Department are somewhat reluctant to help, but then get involved when they realize there's some serious business here. And it's a chase movie as well as a whodunit. There's a couple things going on, but
yeah,
he's looking for his wife.
I wouldn't categorize it as much as an action-adventure movie. I would call it more of a thriller.
Yeah, and it's very European feel. It's very European. It's shot in France.
Oh, yeah, of course.
It's very European style because at this point, Roman Polanski is spending a lot more time in Europe because he's unable to come to America.
And Harrison Ford has to team up with, I think, like a prostitute, right?
Well, she's not really a prostitute. She's a young girl. No, really, she's not really a prostitute. She's a younger girl who gets mixed up, Emmanuel Sanger, and she's doing a job for money, which a lot of young people kind of get involved with. It's kind of like the premise for Orange is the New Black. She wasn't a bad girl. She just was kind of getting involved in smuggling. And they have to team up to find the wife. He's trying to find the wife. She's trying to find the thing, whatever it is, so she can get her money. And a lot of chaos ensues. And again, this is not a happy ending. Some good things come of it, but it's a very sad European movie.
But critically, it's a step up, I believe, from Mosquito Coast as far as the critical response.
Yeah, I think it made money, and, reviewers enjoyed it. But again, fans didn't see Harrison Ford as this kind of guy. And I think as much as he wanted to do these kind of different kind of movies, he realized, he still had to do the other big movies too. And, so I think after that, we get another Indiana Jones movie.
Yeah, he does. He kind of dips back because obviously he has contractual obligations to keep doing Indiana Jones. He even does Working Girl, which is really a comedy, and he's not the star, so it really doesn't count as a street cred type of movie. But after Indiana Jones, we get Presumed Innocent, which I remember the main thing I remember about that movie is his haircut.
Yeah.
He goes back to kind of like a Blade Runner crew cut type of thing.
Yeah, exactly. He's not heroic. This is a guy who's got a little bit of darkness around him, and he's a prosecutor. He's a pretty big deal, politically almost, and it turns out that somebody is raped, somebody's murdered. It's a little vague, but the evidence starts pointing to him, and he's married, and his family has to endure this. And I would think basically it was tippy-toeing into the area of how these pillars of society can also get mixed up into some terrible stuff. So unfortunately, throughout the movie, he's considered the bad guy until basically at the end and so on and so forth. And I don't want to ruin it.
It's definitely a mystery whodunit. And yeah, we don't want to spoil it for anybody. But again, if you're dealing with his serious material, his non-action-y type of stuff, this is a good attempt at solidifying his reputation, within Hollywood. Now, the last film we want to hit is regarding Henry, which is a little different. Again, it's a serious film, but the subject matter is something he hadn't done before. And we get to see him act in a way that we haven't seen him act before. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
All right, this is a Mike Nichols movie. Mike Nichols was a really, really brilliant director. Had a lot of social commentary in his work. Would kind of get political at times. He's known for The Graduate, another of other very interesting movies. So this particular story involves a man who's, again, not really liked, very narcissistic, very unethical, kind of like the 1%. He's kind of abrasive to most people. He's kind of rude to little people that are somehow not, up to his level, let's say. But he gets mixed up just in a crime that he gets shot, and it causes some brain damage. And he has to relearn almost everything, how to be himself and how to fit into society. Now he can no longer do his work, so he's kind of an outcast. And the people helping him are kind of the little people that he was always a little bit of, had a little bit of disdain for.
So, and stepping over in the process.
So this becomes a redemption story, how a very unlikable man, having gone through a terrible trauma, can come back and actually be considered a good man.
Yeah.
And liked. And I guess on half of you, you're supposed to feel sorry for him. On the other half, you say, we can all be a little misguided in our life and lose track of what's important.
It's got a little It's a Wonderful Life type of vibe in terms of a guy who kind of gets to re-examine his life. And in this particular case, they're kind of doing it, like you said, by him having to experience the things and having to rely on the people that normally he would not have even given a second chance. And like I mentioned earlier, he has to act as if he's somebody with brain damage, which again, we haven't seen him do that sort of thing. And we get to see the progression of his treatment. And even, the people that were closer to him, that were, his relationship with his wife, he's kind of cold to her. They're both kind of cold to each other, and how she kind of starts to kind of fall in love with him again because he's like a new person. And most people don't want the old character to come back. They want this new one.
Yeah. And I saw this movie once. I liked it. I liked it more than I thought I would.
It's a drama. It's a heavy drama.
Yeah, drama, but I felt a little bit like, I don't know.
A little Lifetimey?
Yeah. I that's exactly right. That's exactly how I felt.
Little Hallmark Channel?
And, that didn't make it bad. It's just something, I never went back to it for whatever reason, probably that bit of a feeling. But the funny surprises of this movie, to tie it all in to where we always like to go, is it was written by a very young J.J. Abrams, who might have been all of, 23 or something like that.
He was very young, apparently, yes.
Yeah, and, it seems to be good work, and we've seen what's come of him and his career since then. I think he's managed to do a couple other good movies since then, and, but it's very interesting how people's careers intersect, and now they're back together again in The Force Awakens.
Well, I would say, regarding Henry, I wouldn't consider it to be one of the best of his serious films. It's definitely another notch on his belt of serious films that give him that range. For me personally, again, it's going to be Witness. I know for you mentioned Frantic was the one. But again, this is the type of movie that he was still trying to do these serious movies, non-genre material. And, it's worth seeing in terms of his resume.
I feel Harrison Ford's career has had, I'd say there's 4 phases. The early phase when he was basically just very up and coming and getting roles in things like American Graffiti and, some other stuff. Star Wars and that type. Star Wars, indie, those big genre franchise movies.
Yeah.
Then there was the ones we're talking about.
The serious stuff.
Like the serious stuff that, whether consciously trying to go for Oscar bait or just trying to have more range and more of some better class of movies on your resume dramatically.
Right. And then you have The Gun for Hire.
Yeah, and then I feel like after this, that there was definitely still franchises, and he was making big movies, and they were very popular movies. I feel, though, it was the beginning of I wouldn't call it a downslide because the guy has been so successful, but many of the movies afterwards were either pure action kind of, action hero kind of guys, or not great choices. And specifically, I point out like K-19, The Widowmaker, as being a little bit of the beginning of the end. There's a few other movies that he did, but I remember around that era, and it's probably around the 2000s, and I'm not sure if his life changed or if, a midlife crisis or whatever, or just some newer, bigger actors had come around that made him, you're only on top as long as the next guy's not on top of you. And pardon that pun. And I think his career hasn't been as solid in the past, say, 10, 15 years. Would you agree?
Yeah. Like you mentioned.
There's some hits and misses.
Yeah, like you mentioned, he had some, don't get me wrong, he had some huge moneymakers, action genre stuff like the Patriot Game films and even more Indiana Jones films and stuff like that. And that kept him, I'm sure, very financially comfortable. But he didn't seem to kind of go in that direction anymore, or maybe the direction he went, it just did not succeed. A lot of these films would kind of go in and disappear, pretty fast. And it got to the point where it kind of started to feel like he was just a guy who was there for the paycheck. He would come in, and if you pay him his fee, he would do your movie. And again, a lot of people got a benefit from that because a lot of these Hollywood directors or studios who never thought they could get their hands on Harrison Ford, all of a sudden now they were able to throw him on these kind of forgettable movies like Hollywood Homicide, Firewall, Crossing Over, Morning. It's like, I don't even remember half of these.
Yeah, there might be people who like them, but I couldn't be bothered ever again.
You don't see a strategy anymore in what he's picking. You get the vibe that he's just grabbing anything.
I started seeing some of his movies because of respect of, I like Harrison Ford. And then it's like, I think I'm going to skip a few, or these might be, some video movies I'll pick up when the time comes. And there's a few that I still haven't picked up, So
yeah. So I would say, again, if you're interested in examining his serious, heavy hitting stuff, try to watch these movies we just talked about. Obviously, if you're a fan of Harrison Ford, like you mentioned, you are going to find your way into some of these other random films that are not exactly great, but it's nice to see Harrison Ford again. And we're all kind of crossing our fingers that by the time The Force Awakens comes out, we're going to get to see, all classic Han Solo Harrison Ford.
Yeah, he's not a young man, but he's not gone, that's for sure. And there's a few big movies, on the horizon. We have The Force Awakens later in 2015, and we have a potential for Blade Runner 2, which I'm not sure we need. We'll talk about that someday.
Which he might or might not participate. We'll see.
But the fact that he can make a movie, he can participate in a movie like 42, and he can participate in some of these other movies, shows he's still got it, and hopefully we get to see it.
Right. All right. Well, I want to thank James, obviously, for helping me kind of gather all this information, because when we talk about it, we never kind of put things into perspective in terms of, oh wow, that is, it's no coincidence that all these movies, they're all kind of clustered in a certain area, and like we said, it's almost like a strategy, like somebody's trying to map out their career, and they're saying, all right, time to shift gears and concentrate on the serious stuff. And that's exactly what we wanted to kind of talk about and share with you guys today. So thank you, James.
Thank you.
And thank you guys for listening, and we will see you here next time at GeekFest Rants. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
We're awful quiet in there, babe.
I checked in this morning with my wife.
Yes.
And while I was in the shower, she left the room.
Yes.
And she hasn't come back.
She left with a man who had called her. He had his arm around her. He could have had it done.
Like this.
Here. What would you like us to do exactly?
I want you to find my wife. No one will believe him. I hope you know what you're doing, Dr. Walker. And only one person in Paris can help him.
My wife.
Where's my wife? She's about to lead him.
You will get your wife, I'll get my money, and everybody will be happy.
Into a world as mysterious as she is.
Stop lying to me. Now!
What began as a holiday in Paris became a journey into suspense. Harrison Ford in a Roman Polanski film. Frantic.
Wow.
Oh. Stop.